Hello, human. Good to see you again. It's me, Matt Owens. Welcome back to A Cult of Misfits. If you're not familiar, if you haven't heard the news, I've got a podcast. If you want to check it out in the latest episode, I talk about... It's a real uplifting topic, guys. I talk about the end of the world. And the viewership numbers on it are not great. I think that the last thing people want to hear about and ruminate upon is the end of the world right now, with thoughts of nuclear annihilation and thoughts of World War III right around the bend. I think people are very scared. So I talk about things from not a fearful standpoint, but just a gnosis standpoint. I enjoy just learning and other viewpoints of religions and philosophies around the world. And so I talk about the end of the world, not just according to the Bible and Revelation, but the Hindu philosophies regarding the end of the world and dark forces on the planet and the return of a savior figure that's sort of found throughout many cultures and philosophies and religions worldwide. So I talk about the Greeks and this idea of ekpyrosis, that there's this great fire that purges the planet of all impurities, and about themes of rebirth and renewal on the planet. So there is some uplifting points to it. Okay, guys. So check it out if you're interested. If that piques your interest at all, you can listen to the podcast on Spotify and Apple and YouTube and even on your Amazon Alexa or smart device. Today I want to talk about the power of prayer. I've sort of been injecting prayer into my daily routine, which has proven to show some really great results that I want to talk about. And for the main event, I want to talk about Hinduism. Kind of want to do like a Hinduism for dummies, like a Hinduism 101, because for me, I'll raise my hand here in the front row, I'm a dummy. Always the student and always wanting to learn more. If you're anything like me, you sort of had no idea the difference between like Shiva and Krishna and, the Upanishads and the Mahabharata and Yugas and Yogas and Dharma. I had no idea what any of those terms were. I had heard them. I listened to a lot of spiritual podcasts and YouTube videos, and I hear these terms and I often have no idea what they mean. I just know that there's a deity with an elephant head out there somewhere. I have no idea if it's a guy or a girl. I don't know anything about it. I hear these terms like Rama when I'm reading the menu at an Indian restaurant, and I don't know what it means. So it's gonna be Hinduism for dummies today. We're gonna just do sort of a broad brush strokes here, talking about Hinduism, so that I just wanted to grasp some of the basic ideas. So that's what we're going to dive into today. So if that interests you, stick around. Let's talk about prayer. I, as many of you know, I grew up in a Christian household, and, you sort of bow your head and pray before dinner, that sort of thing. If you're struggling in life, you kind of shoot up a prayer to God or to the angels to protect you or whatever. And I haven't ever lost prayer in my life as I've become more quote-unquote spiritual and less quote-unquote religious. I still have conversations with the divine. And there's gratitude in that, but it's never been a formal prayer. I honestly have always sort of respected Muslims for their prayer rituals that they do on a daily basis. But just with my personality, I've never been somebody who is very rigid in my rituals, right? I don't want to get into those patterns and like every morning I have to do this and I have to pray this way and pray that way. Not into it. I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants and do what feels right. And sometimes I pray in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes I might not pray at all. It just sort of, it differs. But as I've been exploring sobriety, which I'm currently sober. Hi, pat on my back, gold star. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and people who are sober. It's encouraging for me to listen to their stories that, sort of get me through the tough times. But many of them have a prayer practice, and that's sort of common amongst many of these people that I'm listening to. They have this practice of of praying to the divine every morning and often every evening before they go to bed. So I kind of thought about that, and I thought like, well, all right, I'll give it a try and see if it feels too rigid. I'll just let it go. And if not, then I'll adopt it and start doing it. So I thought, okay, let's do this thing. Normally when I pray, it's never anything formal. I don't get into a position or bow my head or close my eyes. I just do what I want. But I thought, let's sort of honor this. Let's sort of make this a sacred time and see what happens, right? I'm all about pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work for me. And so I thought just for maybe a few days or a week, I'm just going to try a little prayer ceremony in the morning. First thing when I wake up, I should speak for myself. I get into these habits of, I wake up first thing in the morning and I either grab my phone and start scrolling on Instagram or, start immediately chugging coffee or thinking about what's for breakfast. And I wanted to start doing it more intentionally and sort of intentionally dedicating that time to the divine, to God, if you will. And so what I've started doing is, first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I physically get down on my knees and bow down. I get myself into that position. I extend my hands outward like I'm bowing down to a divine being. And I start with gratitude. I start talking to, I don't like to use the word God, but for this conversation, for this human conversation, we'll use God. I feel like God is a human word to describe the indescribable, the ineffable, but for the sake of this conversation, we'll just use the word God. I thank God for whatever pops into my head. I thank God for a roof over my head, for a pillow to lay my head on every night when I go to bed. I thank God that I have resources to feed myself today, that I have clean water, that I, whatever comes to my heart, I speak it out. And to be honest, it's been a real powerful experience of physically bowing down, physically showing reverence to the divine, reverence to the process of prayer. And so as soon as the gratitudes start flowing, I've often found that the tears start flowing. And it's just such an intense experience, and it's an overwhelming experience, honestly, that I just start crying because it just feels so special and powerful. So I will start with gratitude, and then I will sort of segue into asking for help from the divine. Because oftentimes my ego gets in the way and I think, I can do this by myself. I don't need any God to help me out with this. Like, I got this. Or I'll forget that God is there just standing by, waiting to help me. But I ignore him or, get too wrapped up in my own thoughts or wrapped up in my own day, etc. And I forget that there is a divine hand, a divine presence there, lovingly waiting to guide me and assist me every step of the way. And so this is just a reminder of that. And so I ask God for help on whatever I need help with that day. Dealing with sobriety lately, I ask for help with sobriety, to give me strength, to give me fortitude, to give me faith and trust. Oftentimes I need that extra boost, that extra injection of faith and trust in my life in times where it falters or times where fear takes over, right? And so I ask for help. I ask for help that God can be with me during the day, and then I ask that God will take away my fears, my worries, my anxieties. Oftentimes I find that my brain, my mind, my monkey mind is projecting itself into the future and creating stories that often are not true, right? That get me into a state of fear and worry and anxiety. And I tend to spend a lot of time there. And so lately I've been practicing. It's all practice, right? Practicing, I visualize my fears on my shoulders, and I visualize me taking them off my shoulders and laying them at the feet of God and saying, I'm handing these to you, big guy. I don't want to deal with these anymore. I don't like this burden that I've created for myself. And so I request that you take care of this shit for me, please. And God does, right? And so at the end, I'm usually wiping away tears, right? But I feel, I just feel lighter. It's such a beautiful way to start the morning. I'm getting, a little emotional thinking about it now, because it's really profound, what this practice has been doing for me. And I've been doing it for a couple of weeks now. And it's never once felt like a chore, right? Oftentimes when you start these new habits or new patterns in our lives, it feels like a chore. It takes a while to kind of get into the groove. But right off the bat, when I first started doing it, up until this morning, it just always feels right. It feels good. I feel lighter. I find that I kind of look forward to it. It's a way to just... it's just a great start to the day. And I've also found that I bookend, the beginning of my day, but I also bookend it with a prayer at the end of the day. Before I go to bed, I get down on my knees. There's something to it. There's something powerful about it, of just getting down on your knees and making it a sacred moment. And I am thankful for things throughout the day. Thankful that I have a full belly. Thankful that no harm came to me. Thankful for all the people in my life that love me, etc., etc., etc. And it's different every day. I have a different set of things I talk about. It just sort of, once I get into that flow, it just starts coming out. The things that I'm grateful for, the things that I'm struggling with. It's a really good practice. So as part of that practice, a couple days ago, I was sort of... feeling bad for myself, to be honest with you. I was kind of getting into a little dark place, and just to be vulnerable here, what I was thinking about was I don't have that many friends. I've never had 1,000 friends. My sister was one of my sisters is always the social butterfly, and she always has 10,000 friends, and I was never that person, and that's okay. But I just was sort of wishing that I had more people in my life that just understood me, right? Love me for who I am. That's kind of in short order lately. I feel like there's not a lot of people who understand me and accept me for who I am. And so I was just kind of talking to God about it, about how I wish that there were people in my life who just enjoyed talking about the things I enjoy talking about, like here in the podcast, talking about things of a spiritual nature, or, doing the inner work, reincarnation, and, angels and demons, and just stuff that I like to talk about, right? Aliens and all that stuff. And I don't have that many people in my life that enjoy those conversations. I find that most people in my family, when I start, they know me now, so they just sort of... they're polite, but there's not many people that I know that enjoy having these conversations with me. So it's just sort of asking God, like, hey, I would love it if you could introduce me to some people that are just on my wavelength, right? That are on the same frequency that I am, that vibe with the things that I vibe with. And I just sort of left it at that, and knowing that divine timing will come around when it comes around. And I was just kind of feeling isolated and lonely, and I was in kind of a dark place. And just getting down on myself, that sort of thought pattern, right? And I just asked God, I said, look, I just would love to just be a little bit social. I just would love a little injection of, so I'm more of an introvert, so I'm not, I don't want to be the life of the party. I don't want to hang out with, 500 people, but like, I could use some interaction with other human beings. Please and thank you. So that was that, went to bed, and the next morning I get a text from my social butterfly sister, and, she said, hey, we're going to this barbecue thing, baseball fields thing with my nieces, and I ended up tagging along with them. And there's going to be a bunch of people there, so I just kind of smiled, because I knew that was God's way of sort of answering my prayer that I just had talked about the night before. Like, I would love to just sort of be around some more people for a little bit. And so, lo and behold, I got the opportunity to hang out with a bunch of people the next day, and it was fantastic. And so I show up, and I'm talking to my brother-in-law about just some movie that I saw on Netflix with Russell Crowe that was pretty fantastic. I don't remember the name of it or much about the plot, so let's not get into that. But anyway, there's this guy standing kind of next to us, a stranger that I didn't know, just at the baseball fields next to us. And he was listening to our conversation, and he jumped in and started talking about the movie that we were talking about. And then my brother-in-law kind of, wandered away. And normally I kind of would panic when I'm left alone with a stranger in a park. It's like, it's not in my wheelhouse. I just am normally old past versions of myself would panic. Normally I would go to these social events completely stoned and or drunk out of my mind in order to just get through it. But the new me is pushing into uncharted territories, facing my fears. Good for me. And so I embraced it. Here is a stranger talking to me about a movie, and then one thing led to another, and we start kind of talking about conspiracies, and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of into this. I'm kind of like, where'd you come from, buddy? So we start talking about a conspiracy about O.J. Simpson, which I'd never heard about before, and so that intrigued me. And then, then we start talking about spirituality and the universe and podcasting and stand-up comedy and just all these things that I really enjoy talking about. History and the Roman Empire and the Greeks, and just it was a fantastic conversation, and we really connected. And I said to him, you are, believe it or not, an answered prayer. I just prayed last night for somebody who understands me and enjoys having conversations about the shit that I enjoy talking about, and like, boom, here you are. So hi, you're from heaven. Which is a weird thing to say to a stranger, guys, but I did. It felt right. We just really hit it off, and it was just one of those things, when you find a new friend, and it just immediately what's going on, that it's just meant to be for that season in your life or whatever. So it just felt like an answered prayer upon answered prayer upon answered prayer, and I just wanted to share that with you because it's just, it's been a really special process in my life, this whole prayer thing. And I've been really putting my faith and trust in God to just work out all the kinks in my life. Oftentimes, I just get real stressed out and worried trying to figure it all out myself, right? Trying to wrap my mind around it all and trying to do all the right things and check all the boxes, and I got to do this and I got to do that, and that's exhausting. And so what's really refreshing about this whole process for me is just giving it up, giving it all up to God, giving it up to the divine, the universe, spirit, whatever, and just letting Jesus take the wheel. Because my whole life I've tried to take the wheel, and there's been a lot of near misses of me almost driving off of cliffs, right? It's really hard to let go of control in my life, and perhaps in yours. Maybe you can relate to this, but it's on paper, it sounds great. Like, oh, just letting Jesus take the wheel, letting God take control of our life, right? Like, okay, sure, yeah, I can do that, but it's real hard. I'm usually white knuckling it. Grabbing onto that steering wheel real hard. I don't want to give up control. But the last few years I've found that when I do give up that control of my life and just let go and trust that the divine is going to drive me where I need to go, life gets easier. Life is less stressful for me. Less anxiety, less worry. Because I have divinity driving my life, right? And I had to ask myself, like, do I trust the divine to run the show? and my ego, that voice in my head, was always saying, no, maybe a little bit, but like we need to still keep a couple fingers on that wheel. Right? Just in case things take a left turn, we need to make sure that we can rush back in and take over again. But I found that the results are often disastrous. And so I found that when I just let God take over, and I'm in the passenger seat, and I close my eyes and take a little nap when we're on the road of life, that things go smoother and I arrive at my destination exactly when I'm meant to arrive at my destination. It might be a different route than I had anticipated, right? It might be a different route than my ego or my mind thought that we should be going on. Like, whoa, where I open my eyes from my little nap and I'm like, wait, God, where are we going here? What's going on? This looks scary. I don't recognize this area. This is not on the map. This is not on the map. I had a map. I had a very clear idea where we're supposed to be going. This is not the right route. And God just smiles at me and says, go back to sleep. Go back to sleep, buddy. I got this. And so I'm just letting God be my Uber driver, basically. Let's talk about Hinduism, guys. Let's talk about Hinduism. I don't want this to be a lecture or a PowerPoint presentation sort of a situation. We're just going to kind of do bullet points, just kind of a broad explanation of these things that so I can wrap my mind around it and I'll kind of help you wrap your mind around it, perhaps. Let's start out with the deities, because there's a lot of them. There's a huge pantheon of these deities, right? So I just kind of wanted to wrap my mind around the main ones. There's a huge list of gods and goddesses and all this stuff, but let's start with the big dogs. There's three main versions of the Godhead. They call it the Trimurti, is the Hindu word for it. It's basically, in Christian terms, the Trinity, right? I always try to put things into a frame of reference that I understand, which is Christianity, because that's just sort of what I grew up with. So I try to compare things to that to sort of help me help my little mind understand things a little bit better. But there's just three main aspects of the divine, right? And I think that it's just a human way of understanding things that we can't fully comprehend. In Christianity, there's the concept of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In Hinduism, it's Brahma and Shiva and Vishnu, which I'll break down in a second for you. But they're all just different aspects of the same thing. They're different versions, different avatars, different, whatever word you want to use. But in the same way that I'm Matt Owens, but I'm also a father, I'm also a son, I'm also an American. These are all just different aspects of myself, and they all represent who I am, the completeness and totality of who I am. And so it's just sort of you see this theme throughout the world in these various cosmologies and these various belief systems. There's this idea of not just one being, but it's sort of split up into these various aspects of it that represent different aspects. So back to Hinduism, the main god, the creator god, is Brahma. Brahma is the one who created the all that is, and he was born out of the navel of Vishnu, which is a little like, I don't want to visualize that in my head. It's a little distasteful, but it's sort of weird to picture. But that's where he came from. Brahma is the one that is the creator god, and then you've got Shiva, who is another aspect, male, by the way, all male. All three of these aspects are male. Shiva is the destroyer god, and then you got Vishnu. Vishnu is, for me, the most interesting of them all, because Vishnu is the aspect of God that comes down to earth in an avatar or a human form. Oftentimes, Vishnu would come in forms of animals or whatever, but it's the idea of the divine coming down here to the 3D physical realm, oftentimes to save our butts, right? Acting as some sort of a savior figure. For me, the concept of Vishnu is very similar to the concept of Jesus Christ, an aspect of the divine that has come down to earth to save humanity in one way or another. And so Vishnu has come down to earth 9 different times, and these 9 different, they call them avatars or, incarnations or whatever you want to call it. But there have been 9 different, and this is where you get the different avatars of Vishnu, such as Rama and Krishna and Buddha. Those are the ones that I've heard of. That's why we're talking about them. And there are 6 others that Vishnu has turned into and come down to the physical realm. And what's interesting is there's one to go. According to the Hindus, there are 10 total, and he's only done 9. And the last avatar is called Kalki. And if you haven't checked out my podcast episode about the cosmic Yuga cycles, according to the Hindus, Kalki is the final incarnation of Vishnu at the end of the world. And so Vishnu is just patiently waiting for the shit to hit the fan, and he's going to come back down here in the form of Kalki and as a savior figure to purify the earth, to get rid of the evil and dark and demonic beings and forces on the planet. And it's a sort of a concept of renewal, very similar to the idea of a Christ figure coming back and doing the same thing, riding in on a white horse with a sword of fire, and all of this end times imagery that you find throughout the various belief systems worldwide, including Christianity. Christ coming back on a white horse. This, just these symbolic ideas that are pervasive in all of these various philosophies and religions. So those are the main Godhead. We've got Brahma, the creator God, Shiva, the destroyer God, which also plays a role in the end of the world and the end of these cosmic cycles that they believe in, right? That sort of catapults us into the next cycle and destroys the previous cycle so that the new one may be reborn. And then Vishnu, who is known as the preserver God. They also have these consorts that they're married to. I always thought consort was a word for like a side piece, right? But a consort is just a divine word for wife, basically. So Brahma's consort is Saraswati, if you're interested. Shiva has a consort named Parvati, and Vishnu has a consort named Lakshmi. So they've all got these wives. And then rounding out the gods that I want to talk about today, we've also got the elephant-headed god named Ganesha, who's the god of good luck and god of new beginnings. Shiva, the destroyer god that I mentioned earlier, who's married to Parvati, had this kid Ganesha, the elephant-headed god. And what happened was Parvati, his mother, scraped off some oil from her skin. She was a little greasy. Scraped off some oil from her skin and divinely created a son named Ganesha. And Ganesha was posted to guard outside of her door. And sure enough, her father, Shiva, the destroyer god that I just mentioned, wanted to get in through the door. And her new Ganesha son said, no, you're not allowed to come through here. And there was a bit of a tussle and some confusion, and Shiva ends up slicing off this new kid's head, and Parvati gets real upset about that. And so she says, I demand that you replace his head. And so his head was replaced with that of an elephant. So boom, you got an elephant-headed god. And then the last god that I want to talk about is Hanuman, who is that monkey-headed god that you see in all of the depictions of the gods, and you see in the Indian restaurants, etc. Hanuman is the monkey-headed god, and you find him in these epic stories that I'm going to get into in just a minute, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and we'll get into that in a second. But anyway, Hanuman is the monkey god. So those are basically the main deities I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about something different. We've talked about yogas. I always thought that yoga was, you go to the yoga studio and do your stretches, and there's some breathing exercises, and that's yoga, right? According to Westerners. But what I didn't realize was that the yogas in the Hindu philosophy is basically, it means to unite. It's to unite with the divine. And essentially, it's showing us as humans how to unite with the divine in order to gain liberation, right? Liberation from all of this. And so the path to do that is through these various yogas. So the main paths and the main yogas in order to gain this liberation is The first one is Raja Yoga, which is the path of meditation and mental discipline, right? Of controlling the mind, controlling our thoughts, controlling our emotions in order to gain liberation. The next one is Bhakti Yoga, which is the path of surrender and devotion and love towards God, right? This goes hand in hand with my prayers that I have every morning. It's just it's surrender, right? Surrendering to the divine and saying, I give up, right? I can't do this without you. I need your help. And I surrender my heart, I surrender my mind, I surrender my actions to the divine. I show my devotion to you, and I show my love to you. So that's the next path. The next path is Karma Yoga, which is the path of selfless action. You know, the idea of acting without expecting something in return, which is often difficult as humans, right? And then the last of the main paths to freedom is Jnana Yoga, which is the path of knowledge and wisdom, studying the ancient texts and the ancient scriptures. This is the same as the Gnostic philosophies. They believe in that the path to liberation is through gnosis, through knowledge, right? Oftentimes our third eye is closed, or we're set in our belief systems and we're unwilling to look outside of what we believe to be true. And part of that, for me, I've always been a very curious person. I love knowledge. I love learning. I love looking into different belief systems outside of what I know, Christianity, and that's why we're talking about Hinduism. I'm on the path of knowledge. I'm on the path of Jnana Yoga. So those are the main yogas, and then there's several supplementary practices that can be done in conjunction with those main ones in order to free ourselves. There's Hatha Yoga, which is using these poses, these stretches that we were talking about, like a yoga studio. They're called asanas. In order to prepare our minds and prepare our bodies through breathing exercises, aka pranayama. Pranayama, that's something I'd heard about before. No idea what that word means, but it's intentional and meaningful breathing exercises to calm our system, calm our spirit, calm our mind, calm our body, calm our nervous system, right? There's the idea of Kundalini Yoga, which is awakening dormant spiritual energy that's in the body, right? These blockages that we have in our system, in our energetic system, in our energetic body. The idea that it's this snake-like energy that rises from the base of our bodies and our energy systems and rises up through the crown, and in order to free up blockages, in order to rebalance our system. There's mantra yoga, which is using sacred sounds to focus and purify the mind, right? Like Om, in order to focus the mind again, focus the body again, focus, and bring all of the mind, body, and spirit into conjunction through the use of these sacred sounds. There's Tantra yoga, which is just, again, more energy work in order to create sacred union with the divine. Tantra is often in the West, we hear about tantric sex, and that's that's all I knew about it, right? But apparently it's more complicated than that, and sex can be a component of it, but it's not the main component and the main feature of Tantra yoga, but it can be used, sexuality can be used, and it's just sort of a common misconception that that's what it is. And then the last one of the yogas I want to talk about before we move on to the next topic is Laya yoga, which is focusing on dissolution of the ego, of self-identity, of not, of this idea that we are not all one, that there's sort of a separation. And so it involves transcending our own personal desires and our own attachments in order to free ourselves. Oftentimes we have attachments to belief systems, right, that keep us from being free. We have personal desires that keep us locked in, that we can't, these limiting beliefs that we have within our own minds, saying that, I won't be happy unless I have this, or unless I get this, or unless I have a partner, or this job, or this house, or these material things, right? That there's a lot of suffering that comes when we attach ourselves to these various desires. And so these last few years, I've been working on this a lot in conjunction with all these other yogas, in order to free myself, not just free myself from the material realm, but to just free myself from my own junk, right? I've learned that when I let go of my desires and let go of all these attachments to how I think people should be treating me, my attachments to how I think the world should be operating, things of this nature, I've found that the more suffering that I have in my own life, because when things don't go my way, I start, pouting or throwing a pity party or, things of this nature. So I've found that it's much more freeing in my own life to just sort of let go of these attachments, right? Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about some of these ancient scriptures that's in the Hindu belief system. We'll start out with the Vedas. I had heard of the Vedas before, no idea what they meant. Basically, the Vedas are the oldest, and many consider them the most important of these sacred texts. Veda is Sanskrit for the word wisdom or knowledge, so it's just teaching you this ancient knowledge. In my mind, these Vedas are very similar to the Old Testament in the way that the Vedas are broken down into different sections that I won't get into just because I don't want to muddle everything. I just want to keep focused on main topics and main ideas and big picture here. But the Vedas contain a lot of text that contain chants and melodies and songs of the divine, which again, there's similar things found in the Old Testament, these songs for the gods, for the divine, for the deities. There's a lot of rituals and recitations, a lot of hymns, and ceremonies. It talks about guidelines for conducting these ceremonies and guidelines for specific ceremonies and sacrifices that need to be done. Rituals, incantations, spells. There's a lot of incantations for just everyday life, for health and well-being and just basic stuff like that. And in the Old Testament, there's a lot of that too, just ritualistic things that needed to be done, sacrificing things in order to connect to the divine, in order to atone for sins, that sort of thing. That's a Christian concept and not a Hindu concept, but the Old Testament, there's a lot of this ritualism, right? And very rigid stuff, in my opinion. But it's just a sort of a way for Yahweh in the Bible to teach humanity the proper way to interact with the divine through these spells and incantations. So those are the Vedas. They were written about 3,000 years ago, by the way. Many of these things, Hinduism, these ancient texts, were later then influencing things like Buddhism and Jainism and these other Eastern philosophies. It all sort of started with Hinduism. So those are the Vedas. So then the next set of sacred texts are called the Upanishads. The Upanishads are, again, just to compare it to a Christian perspective, this is just my view of it. The Upanishads are more philosophical in nature, more esoteric in nature. They were written after the Vedas, and they sort of take the form of a dialogue between a yogi, between a teacher and a student, right? It's meant to teach these deeper philosophical, esoteric ideas and concepts. And in the same way that the New Testament has Jesus giving similar things, philosophical concepts about how to live a good life, how to be a good neighbor, practicing these ideas of love, concepts of one's place in the universe, that sort of thing. And it relies less on the Vedas, the previous set of texts, which are more ritualistic, and ceremonial. This is more, this is the good stuff for me. This is the stuff I like to talk about, right? And so in the Upanishads, it talks about the nature of reality. It talks about this concept of Brahman. Brahman is the idea that there's this ultimate, unchanging reality, sort of the all that is, right? The infinite universe, the essence that permeates everything. That's Brahman. And then in contrast to that, or in conjunction with it, is the idea of the Atman. The Atman and the Brahman. The Brahman is the all that is, and the Atman is the individual self, the individual soul, the individual identity. And at the end of the day, what the teachings tell us is that the Brahman, the all that is, and the Atman, the individual, are all the same thing. Right? They're just ways that the human mind tries to wrap around these divine concepts. But at the end of the day, everything is one, right? That we are a part of the all that is. It's this concept that there is no separation. There is no duality. There is no difference between us and the all that is, right? That's just a concept that's in our minds. So that's the Brahman and the Atman. And then it talks about, in the Upanishads, it talks about the idea of samsara, which is the cycle of death and birth and rebirth. And then there's the concept of moksha, which is the idea of liberation from this cycle of birth and death and rebirth, which is what is the ultimate goal. It's the same idea as nirvana, right? Later on, the Buddhists adopt this idea of nirvana. It's all the same thing of just breaking free from this cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And so part of this is achieved through the realization that we are one with everything, right? Let's see, what else we got? Yeah, I think that's it. No, we won't talk about that. All right, so that's it. Those are the Vedas. So just to recap quickly for our own brains, the Vedas are sort of like the Old Testament, talk about rituals and ceremonies. The Upanishads are more philosophical, talking about the all that is and our individuality and how we are all one. And there's this cycle of death, birth, and eventual getting off of the cycle, right? So then you got the Puranas. The Puranas are another set of ancient scripts, and they just basically talk about stories of gods and goddesses and heroes and legendary figures and tales of morality and ethics, things of that nature. But it also talks about creation stories and sort of the nature of the realms that we're currently in and the realms that are beyond our current realm, right? Beyond the veil, which I find interesting as well. So, the Yuga cycles, this is where the Yuga cycles are explained, is in the Puranas. The Puranas talk about these cosmic Yuga cycles that I've talked about in previous episodes. If you're interested, I sort of break down these grand cycles that humanity goes through. There's the gold cycle, which is the highest and best one, and then there's the silver one as humanity degrades over time, and then the bronze, and then the iron one is the darkest of them all, which we're currently residing in. And then the cycle starts all over again, right? And this is where Shiva, the destroyer god, comes into play in ending these cycles and letting the new ones spring forth. So this is where the Yuga cycles are explained. The Puranas also talk about creation stories of where Brahma, the creator god, comes from, like I mentioned, out of the navel of Vishnu, and how Brahma created the universe and the planets and things of that nature. There's also this idea at the end of these grand cosmic cycles, the idea that Shiva the Destroyer brings along this cosmic dissolution, that everything is dissolved into nothingness and into a void, and then whether you want to call it a Big Bang or whatever, there is the rebirth of the entire universe, not just this realm, but all of the realms and all of the beings that exist within all of God's creation. The Puranas also talk about how the universe is divided into these various realms, They call them lokas. There are 14 lokas, or realms. This is the same concept that many belief systems around the world believe in, like the Nordic traditions, where there's Valhalla, there's these heavenly realms that are above us, and then there are these dark underworlds below us. So according to the Hindus, there are these 14 lokas. There are 7 above us and 7 below us. The upper ones are the heavenly realms that they describe in great detail. But I think that they are beyond our comprehension, to be honest with you. I think that we try to picture what lives there and resides there, but I think at the end of the day, we have no idea. But I think that there are a godly realm, and there's an angelic realm, and a heavenly realm, and a spirit realm, and things of that nature. The middle realm is where we are on Earth, in the physical realm, and then there are 7 lower realms. And according to the Hindus, these lower realms, or lokas, are where the demons are, or the nagas. These snake beings, these evil dark snake beings, live down in the dungeon, the lower realms. So I find that interesting. I find that it also interesting that there's this concept of these different realms in essentially every religion across the planet. Even in Christianity, there aren't many realms, but there is an upper realm that we call heaven and a lower realm we call hell. And I think that it's just like I always talk about, anytime there are these concepts and themes and ideas that sort of permeate all of the religions, I sort of take note. I take note of that because I think there's something to it, that perhaps there are these various realms, and that once we perhaps exit the reincarnation cycle and achieve moksha, or nirvana, according to the Buddhists, that we then can advance to these upper realms, right? All right, so those are the realms, those are the lokas. The Puranas, these texts that we're talking about, these Puranas, Puranas, it's not like the killer fish, although that would be pretty badass. Then there's a concept of dharma. That's another term that I had heard of. I'm old enough to remember the sitcom Dharma and Greg. But I have no idea what dharma means. I feel like most Westerners know what karma means. Karma being, the law of cause and effect. Basically, what goes around comes around. But then dharma is this concept, this idea of one's duty. Right? It talks about like moral order and righteousness, but it's basically your duty being your life purpose. And it's not necessarily your whole life. There's one purpose. There are different aspects to dharma, depending on the different season or chapter of your life and where you're at right now, which season you're in. An example of one's dharma is, a student's dharma is to study and read books and take tests. That's part of what their dharma is, what their duty is during that time. But then, of course, once they graduate from high school or graduate from university or whatever, then that dharma is complete, and a new dharma may take place. Once you find yourself maybe as a dad or a mom, and now your dharma or your duty is the raising of a child, etc. So it's sort of what gives meaning to one's life. And if you are not living within your dharma, it often leads to disharmony and struggle and inner conflict and sort of general, dissatisfaction with one's life. Oftentimes, at least in the Western world and in America, we find ourselves perhaps not living within our own dharma, in the sense that we're working a job that we don't enjoy. Right, working a 9-to-5 job, or our heart is sort of pushing us in one direction, that we're maybe meant to be an artist, but instead, one thing led to another. Got to pay bills. Got to just sort of do the grind, and we get away from our dharma and aren't doing what we're meant to be doing, cosmically speaking, for the purpose of our souls, for our Atman, right? And that often leads to this severe dissatisfaction with our lives is because we're not doing what we're meant to be doing. So, that is an overview of basically everything that's found in these sacred texts known as the Puranas. Okay, two more, and then we're done. We'll wrap this thing up. I want to talk about two more texts, two big block of texts that are important to the Hindus, and then we'll be done here. There's these two epic stories, these epic tales, in the same vein as like the Iliad type of a situation, or what am I thinking of? I was gonna say Gulliver's Travels. That's not what I'm thinking of. The ones from ancient Mesopotamia. It's slipping my mind now, but well, maybe you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. They're these epic tales. So the first one is called the Ramayana. It was written by this dude called the Maharishi Valmiki. He's known as the Adi Kavi, which means the first poet. So he was the old school first poet. This epic tale was told about 500 BC, and with all of these texts, these ancient scriptures and stuff, not just in Hinduism but in Christianity and across the board, and in Jewish tradition, etc. There was this oral tradition. These stories were told for thousands of years in an oral way. Before somebody got the bright idea of writing it down or chiseling it into a tablet or whatever, but the Ramayana, Rama being the one of the divine avatars or incarnations of the god Vishnu, one of the main gods I talked about earlier. It's divided into 7 books. It's freaking long. It's really, really long. It's 4 times as long as the Iliad. And if you ever had to read the Iliad in high school, it's long. So this thing is 4 times as long as the Iliad. And I'll just break down the story for you real briefly. It's this idea that Rama being the guy, the incarnation of the god Vishnu, Rama is done wrong by his stepmom. He's a prince. He's royal. His dad is the king, married to his stepmom, and his stepmom has another son. And when it comes time to ascend the throne, some shenanigans happen, and his stepmom steps in and insists that her son, Rama's stepbro, take over the throne. So one thing leads to another, and Rama ends up being exiled from the kingdom. His wife Sita, Rama's wife Sita, says, "I'll stick by your side. I love you." So Rama and Sita, in love, go and become exiled for 14 years. And then along the way, it's a very long story. That's why we're brushing over it. If you're interested, check it out yourself. But a lot of adventures. They meet a lot of fun characters along the way, including Hanuman, that monkey god that we mentioned earlier. This is where he comes to shine. He ends up becoming very loyal to Rama, the prince, the god in human form. He becomes very loyal to Rama and is, by his side the whole time in these epic adventures that they go on. Eventually, Sita, the wife, becomes captured by this demon. There's a lot of demons floating around, causing trouble, and so they capture his wife, and that leads to more adventure, and they have to try to figure out how to, get back his wife, and there's a lot of killing of demons and epic battles and things of that nature. Eventually, at the end of the day, Rama rescues his wife from the demon king, and his buddy, the monkey god, it's very Star Wars, right? This whole hero's tale type of a thing. These epic stories all have very similar themes to them. They all return back. I like to think of Hanuman, the monkey god, as sort of a Han Solo type situation. So eventually, it's a happy ending. They save her from the demons. They return back to the kingdom. system, and all of the rights, all the wrongs are righted, and he gains back his seat on the throne, and the stepmom is dealt with, and that sort of thing. But then eventually Sita, the wife, there's a lot of, ugly rumors going around about her purity and whether or not she's sleeping around with people. And, she's put in fire, and all these tests are given to her to prove her purity. It's a witch hunt. It's a witch trial, right? It's like putting the witches in the water during the Salem witch trials. Like, they put a rock on their chest, and if they float, they're a witch. If they die, they're a witch. If they float, they're a witch. They're a witch either way, right? They can't win. So, anyway, she's left in the woods and put through all these trials to show her purity, and she's put through the ringer, and it's real ugly, guys. But eventually she just reaches her wit's end and is tearing her hair out because she wasn't sleeping around at the end of the day. Like, I think we all know that. But her reputation is tainted and all this. So anyway, she, gets down on her knees and prays to, basically to Mother Earth, and just says, hey, look, help me out here. Like, I'm so sick of these guys blaming me for sleeping around and all this nonsense. Like, can you please throw me a bone here and help me out? So Mother Earth, rises up and vouches for Sita and says, you guys are idiots. She wasn't sleeping around. So eventually she's like, Mother Earth says, oh, I'm taking you out of here, girl. I got your back. So Mother Earth saves Sita, ends up turning her into a goddess, and she's renamed Lakshmi, and she becomes a consort, one of the god's wives. And so anyway, that's my short version of the Ramayana. That's the Matt Owens version of the Ramayana. And then finally, grand finale here, guys. We're going to talk about the second of the main epics. This one is the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata. It was written a few hundred years after the previous epic, the Ramayana. And so this is the Mahabharata. I will briefly tell you the story just like I did in the last round. And this is the one that contains the Bhagavad Gita. That's another one of those Hindu terms that I've heard. It sounds enlightened. I have no idea what it is, so we'll talk about it briefly. Mahabharata, guys, it's the longest of all the epics in the world. It's actually 10 times as long as the Iliad. I don't know when the Iliad became the measuring tool, but the last epic story, the Ramayana, was 4 times as long. This one, the Mahabharata, is 10. I keep saying the words so I can burn them into your brains. This is what I do. I'm really doing it for myself. I keep saying these words to just get it shoved into my gray matter. The Mahabharata is 10 times as long as the Iliad. And there's some belief by scholars that the events within this epic story may have actually happened in real life. So there's some evidence that it may have happened. So the main story here, I'll give you the cliff notes to the Mahabharata, is it's a story of an epic struggle between 2 branches of the Kuru dynasty. 2 family branches fighting for the throne. The one main branch is 5 brothers. They are the rightful heirs to the throne. And then the other branch, the bad guys, if you will, are just a bunch of asshole cousins who are looking to seize power, right? It's a tale as old as time. It kind of reminded me of like the... just a little Romeo and Juliet situation, right? Where they're just sort of fighting for these 2 families, these rivals, fighting for power type of a deal. So, anyway, they're fighting for power, fighting for the throne. Along the way, just like in the previous one, there's a lot of trials and adventures and battles. And this is where Hanuman, the monkey god, shows up again. He loves a good battle, so shows up for some adventures, shows up for some battles. So there's this epic battle that happens, but before the battle for the throne happens, this is where the Bhagavad Gita comes into play. The Bhagavad Gita is a chunk of text that happens before the battle, and it's basically this philosophical dialogue between the main good guy warrior, one of the guys that's on the brothers team that are fighting for the throne, It's this warrior prince, and he has a conversation with Krishna, right? Now, Krishna is one of the 10 avatars of Vishnu. Krishna comes down to earth to help people out. So Krishna comes down and has a little fireside chat with this prince, with this warrior, because this warrior is having a moral battle within his own heart, right? He's like, I don't want to be fighting these guys. They're my own family. Why can't we all just get along? And so the Bhagavad Gita is basically this conversation between Krishna and this guy, and they talk about morality. They talk about these concepts and ideas around righteousness and spiritual wisdom and enlightenment. And Krishna basically tells this warrior that this is part of his dharma, this is part of his duty to do this. The various yogas are explained to the warrior, and the nature of self, and he kind of talks him through it and pumps him up and sort of confirms that this is where he's meant to be. This is what he's meant to be doing. This is all part of the plan. And so anyway, there's an epic battle that happens, and eventually the rightful guys, the brothers, win the battle, of course, but there's great bloodshed and suffering and loss on both sides. And so traditionally at the end of this battle is the beginning, according to the Hindus, and Hindu scholars, I should say, believe that at the end of this battle is the beginning of the Kali Yuga. And if you didn't listen to my last podcast episode, I talk in depth about the end times. The last cycle, the iron cycle, the darkest cycle, is the Kali Yuga, where it's the end of humanity. It's the end of this last and final cycle, and it ends in fire, depending on who you're talking to. But so the Kali Yuga starts at the end of this battle, and according to the Hindus, the Kali Yuga lasts about 400,000 years. So for those of you that were excited at the end of this cycle, it's going to be a while, so don't get too excited. Get comfortable, because buckle up, it's going to be a while. But the Kali Yuga cycle started at the end of this battle. So just to sort of put everything into context as to the timelines of everything. So that wraps up my Matt Owens lecture on Hinduism for Dummies. Thank you for joining me. If you're interested in any of these topics, I'm happy to dive into them more and break them down in a way that is consumable and digestible for myself and you. I love talking about this stuff. I love putting it on. I'm all about the puzzle. I'm always trying to put the puzzle pieces together. I love looking into Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism. And I just was talking to somebody today about Rosicrucianism and how that's sort of on my to-do list. I don't know that much about it. I want to learn more about it, because I'm all about putting these puzzle pieces together, because at the end of the day, they're all interconnected, right? This concept that is pervasive in these Eastern philosophies and belief systems is that it's all connected, not just physically and spiritually, but these religious ideas and concepts are all related. If you look at them with an open mind and an open heart, you can see the similarities between them all, right? These concepts of just love, these concepts of unity, these concepts of righteousness and doing the right thing and being kind to your neighbors and things of that nature. So thank you for joining me. I love talking about these things, and that's all I got for today. End transmission.